The conference room smells like stale coffee and the industrial carpet they installed in 2003. I can feel it under my shoes as I walk in, that particular softness that comes from 10,000 footsteps over 2 decades. The morning light cuts through the vertical blinds, making these harsh lines across the mahogany table. It's a Tuesday, not even late in the month, just a regular Tuesday in March, the kind where you don't expect anything to change. Glenn Hartley's already sitting down, my boss, Vice President of Operations. We've worked together for 8 years, and I can read him the way you read weather. There's something different in his jaw today. He's looking at his hands instead of at me. That's when I know. Not because he said anything, not because there's been an email or a memo, just the way he's sitting there, uncomfortable in his own skin, like his body knows the words before his brain's caught up. I pull out the chair across from him, the same chair I've pulled out maybe 300 times in this room, and I sit down. I don't say anything. I've learned in 52 years that sometimes silence buys you information. "Marcus," he starts, and his voice has that rehearsed quality, like he's been practicing this in the mirror. "I need to talk to you about restructuring, some changes that are going to position the company better for growth." I'm already there, already 3 steps ahead. I know where this is going, but I let him finish. That's the professional thing to do. We've brought in a consultant, someone who specializes in operational transformation. His name is Brandon Eckert. He's got his MBA from a school in North Carolina. He's got some really fresh ideas about how we can leverage our supply chain more efficiently, and "You're replacing me," I say, not a question. Glenn's face goes tight. "Not replacing, restructuring. Brandon's coming in as an operations transformation specialist. You'd still be here, Marcus, but in a different capacity." What he doesn't say is louder than what he does. I know what different capacity means. It means pushed to the side. It means meetings I'm not in. It means my 28 years of running this division, of building it from a 4-man warehouse operation into a 90-person department that moves $300 million in goods annually. All of that is being packaged up and handed to someone fresh out of business school who's never worn a warehouse vest in his life. I was 24 when I walked into Midwest Logistics Distribution. That was 1996. The company was doing about $12 million in annual revenue, and the operations division was basically Jerry Mitchell and 2 guys who didn't know what they were doing. Jerry was the division head then, older guy, ex-military. He gave me the job as a warehouse supervisor because I showed up on time and asked good questions. What nobody tells you about logistics is that it's not just moving boxes. It's 1,000 small decisions a day that cascade into either profit or disaster. It's knowing which suppliers to push on price, and which ones you let win because their quality is non-negotiable. It's understanding that a warehouse is a living system. If you treat it that way, it thrives. If you treat it like a machine, it breaks. It's relationships, it's trust, it's doing what you said you'd do, every single time. Over the first 5 years, I moved from warehouse supervisor to operations manager. I trained the first serious management team we had. I helped negotiate our first major contract with national retailers, a deal that was worth $25 million annually, and that kept us afloat through the 2008 recession. I built the systems that tracked inventory, that managed our fleet, that interfaced with clients. I was in the warehouse at 5 in the morning. I was on calls with clients at 10 at night. I moved through that company like I was building something that would last. By 2010, Jerry retired. I became senior operations director. The company had grown to about $80 million in revenue. We had 3 warehouses across the Midwest. I had 40 people reporting directly to me, and about 200 total in the division. I negotiated a major contract with Midwest Industrial Supply that was worth $53 million over 5 years. I built the infrastructure that allowed the company to survive the pandemic supply chain crisis. When everyone else was panicking in 2021, my teams were moving product. We brought in more revenue that year than any year in the company's history, and I did it quietly. That's important. I'm not the kind of guy who needs applause. I came in, I did the work, I went home. But the people who worked for me knew that I had their backs. The suppliers knew that a handshake with Marcus meant something. The clients knew that if something went wrong, I'd fix it. My wife Karen used to say that I loved that company more than I loved our kids. That's not fair, but it's not completely wrong either. I was there through both of their childhoods. I missed some things, but I built something. That mattered to me. So when Glenn sits there in that conference room and tells me that Brandon Eckert is coming in as my successor because he has fresh ideas and a modern business degree, I'm not angry. I'm not even surprised, really. It's the way the world works now. Loyalty doesn't matter. Results don't matter. What matters is whether you fit the new shape the company's trying to be. When does he start? I ask. Week after next. We'll want to do a transition. You'll show him. I'll show him everything he needs to know, I say, and I mean it. Because that's who I am. I'm the kind of person who does the job in front of him, regardless of whether the job is fair. I stand up. The meeting's over. Glenn looks like he wants to say more. Maybe he wants me to cry or beg or promise I can change, promise I can be more transformational, or whatever the new language is. But I don't give him anything. I just nod and walk back to my office. The walls are covered with 28 years of accumulated evidence. Photos of warehouses at different points in their lives. Awards from trade organizations. A framed article from a logistics journal about our pandemic response. Letters from grateful clients. My son's elementary school photo. My daughter's college graduation picture. A plaque from the team when we hit $1 billion moved in a calendar year. I close the door and I sit at my desk. The desk that's been mine since 2010. And I start thinking about the future in a way I haven't really allowed myself to since 1996. I have 18 months until I can take my full pension. 18 months. The math is clean. If I can make it to 63 and a half, I get everything. Full benefits. The company pays for Karen's health insurance. It's a good deal, a deal I've earned. So the rational play is to keep my head down, train Brandon Eckert properly, stay long enough to hit that mark, and then ride out with dignity. But there's something else happening. Something I can feel but can't quite name yet. It's in the way Glenn couldn't look me in the eye. It's in the fact that they're bringing in an outside expert because something's wrong. And whatever's wrong, I'm the easy answer. I'm the change they can make to feel like they're doing something. I start making a list. Nothing written down, I'm not stupid. But in my head, a list of everything I know. Every supplier's direct line, every client's specific requirements, every system I built and how it works, every crisis we've averted and how we avert them, every person in this organization and what they're worth and what they need, every decision that looks simple but is actually complicated, every shortcut that looks good until it isn't. Brandon Eckert's going to need all of that. And if I'm smart, if I'm very smart, I'm going to make sure he doesn't get it quite easily enough. Not in a way that's sabotage. I'm not that guy. But I'm not going to give it away either. I'm going to do my job exactly as I always have. I'm going to train him. I'm going to show him everything. And I'm going to let the outcomes speak for themselves. Brandon Eckert walks into the office on a Monday in late March, and the first thing he does is schedule a company-wide all-hands meeting. We're all standing there in the break room, 90 people, cramped, maybe 75% of the division plus some corporate types, and he's got a PowerPoint presentation. A presentation. For the first day. I can see it on the faces of people around me. These are warehouse people. They don't speak PowerPoint. He's younger than I thought from Glenn's description. 38, sure, but he carries himself like he's never spent a day around people who actually work for a living. His shoes are too clean. His hands don't have the kind of wear that comes from touching equipment and inventory in the real world. He's got an energy that reads like cocaine, all movement and confidence and no apparent substance underneath. I'm excited to be here, he says, and his smile is the smile of someone who's never had to smile at people when things go wrong. I can see that Midwest Logistics Distribution has done solid work. Solid. But there's a lot of room for optimization. We're going to implement some best practices from other organizations I've worked with. We're going to leverage the data to drive efficiency. We're going to think about supply chain integration in a much more dynamic way. I want to start by doing a full audit of every process. Nothing's off the table. Everything can be better. I watch a woman named Deb Carnes in the front row shift her weight. Deb's been with the company for 23 years. She manages our largest warehouse in Columbus. She's the reason that warehouse runs like a Swiss watch. Brandon's words are landing on her like random noise. Over the next 2 weeks, I'm supposed to transition him, walking through everything. I'm scheduled to spend every afternoon with him in my office, going through systems, introducing him to key people, explaining how decisions get made. It's professional. It's clean. And I'm as helpful as I can be while also being completely honest about how things work. So the relationship with Riverside Wholesale, I tell him on a Wednesday, that's the foundation of our operation. They supply about 18% of our inventory for the bigger clients. The owner's name is Tom Keener. I've been working with Tom for 16 years. We don't have a contract, or we do, but it's negotiable every year. The reason that works is because Tom knows that I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be steady. And if something goes wrong on my end, I own it. Tom's margins are thin. His business is fragile, but he's never failed us once. Brandon's taking notes, fast notes, lots of them. I can see words like renegotiate and cost and maybe alternative suppliers. Is there any leverage there, he asks, in the annual renegotiation? If you want to call it that, I say. But I think of it differently. The leverage is mutual. He's got leverage on us. We've got leverage on him. The healthier way to think about it is that we've both got incentive to keep things good. Brandon looks skeptical. But objectively, could we get better pricing if we pushed? Maybe 1% or 2%, I say. But you'd lose reliability, and in this business, reliability is worth more than 1% or 2%. He nods, but I can tell he doesn't believe me. He thinks I've been too soft. He thinks that's why we're being restructured, that I'm the old guard and he's the new blood who's going to squeeze the inefficiencies out of the system. Here's the problem. I'm right, but I can't convince him. And in about 6 weeks, he's going to learn that the hard way. I stay through the transition period. I'm there every day, doing my job, showing up, explaining what needs to be done and why. But I'm also starting to prepare for what comes next. I have conversations with 3 recruiting firms. I tell them that I'm interested in operations consulting or in starting something of my own. 2 of them are genuinely interested. 1 is very interested. They know my reputation. They've seen what I've built. I also reach out to people I've worked with over the years, quietly. I don't say anything about what's happening at Midwest Logistics. I just reconnect. Coffee with people I haven't talked to in a while. Lunch with industry contacts. A call to a guy named Richard Pace who ran operations at a competitor company 8 years ago. Now he's doing something else, but he still knows people. I'm building a net. Not out of desperation, out of clarity. Something's going to break. I don't know exactly what or exactly when, but I know it's going to break, and I want to make sure I've got options when it does. By the beginning of May, about 6 weeks into Brandon's tenure, the cracks are visible. He's made 3 decisions in that time, and all 3 are problems. The first is Riverside Wholesale. True to form, Brandon had a meeting with Tom Keener about the annual contract renewal. Brandon walked in with a market analysis he'd done, comparing Riverside's pricing to other suppliers and making the case that Riverside was overcharging by about 4%. He pushed for a reduction. Tom Keener, who's a decent guy but who also has a business to run, said no. Said his margins were what they were. Said take it or leave it. Brandon left the meeting thinking he'd negotiated hard. What actually happened is Tom Keener started talking to other companies about where they could move their business. By early May, Riverside had started shipping to Midwest Logistics' main competitor, a company called Accelerated Distribution about 2 hours south. They didn't cut us off entirely, but they reduced their capacity allocation for us by about 30%. And they started quoting us higher prices for emergency orders. I know all this because I still talk to people in the warehouse. They tell me things. The inventory levels are tighter. There's more emergency sourcing. Costs are creeping up. The second decision is worse. Brandon implemented a new warehouse optimization system. It came out of one of his business school case studies, I think. The idea is that you use real-time data to move inventory more dynamically through the warehouse. Less standing inventory. Faster movement. Theoretically better. In theory. But the system was designed for massive operations. Amazon-scale distribution. We're regional. We have loyal clients who value consistency and predictability. When you force everything to move in real time, you create chaos. Picking errors spike. Client shipments get delayed. Quality control suffers. By May, we're having more customer complaints than I've seen in 15 years. Deb Carnes is pulling her hair out trying to manage the system and also manage the actual business. I hear through channels that she's updated her resume. The third decision is the worst. Brandon decided that we were overstaffed. He did some analysis, and I saw the spreadsheet because he shared it with Glenn, that suggested we could reduce headcount by about 20% and still maintain output. The analysis was garbage. It didn't account for seasonal variance. It didn't factor in the labor requirements of the warehouse optimization system he'd just implemented. It didn't understand that in logistics, you need redundancy. You need people ready for crisis. You run lean and you'll break. But he pushed for cuts anyway. In mid-May, we had a reduction in force. 30 people gone. Good people. People with families. I watched it happen because I didn't have a choice. Glenn asked me to help identify people to cut. I refused. I told him that was Brandon's decision to implement, so Brandon could handle the consequences. Glenn did it anyway, with HR and whatever logic Brandon had provided. By the end of May, the department was running hot. We were making mistakes. Client complaints were up. Costs were up. And I was watching a machine I'd spent 28 years building get dismantled in slow motion. I'm now in serious talks with two firms. One is a consulting company that wants to hire me as a senior operations strategist. The other is a client I've worked with for 12 years, National Retailers, the big one, and they want to talk about bringing me in as a VP of operations for their Midwest division. Both conversations are happening quietly. Both are serious. The consulting job would be a salary cut from what I make now, but the consulting company's revenue is stable. The VP position would be a lateral move in salary, but a significant boost in authority and title. I'm also documenting everything. Not for Midwest Logistics, for myself. Every system I built, every process that works, every supplier relationship and how it's maintained, every decision that matters. I'm creating a knowledge base for myself, for whoever I work for next. I don't need to protect Midwest Logistics anymore. I need to protect myself. By early June, something shifts. We get a call from our largest client, a company called Industrial Solutions Group that represents about 18% of our annual revenue. They're based in Indiana, and they've been with us for 14 years. The VP there is a guy named Tom Belvedere. I've met with Tom hundreds of times. We've solved problems together. I've eaten lunch with him. I know his son's name. That's what client relationships look like when they're real. Tom calls Glenn. I don't know what he says, but the conversation's tense. Glenn calls Brandon into his office. And then Glenn calls me. He wants me in his office. Now, when I walk in, Brandon's already there. He's trying to look calm, but I can see the panic underneath. We've got a situation, Glenn says. Industrial Solutions Group is threatening to move their business. They're saying our quality and delivery have deteriorated significantly in the past 2 months. They're threatening a contract review. Tom represents 18% of our revenue. That's about $15 million a year. If they leave, the company goes into crisis mode immediately. What specifically did they cite? I ask. Shipping errors, Glenn says. Incomplete orders, missed deadlines. They said the last 3 shipments have had problems. I look at Brandon. He's looking at his hands. I know what happened, I say. The warehouse optimization system created complexity that we didn't have the staffing to manage, especially after the RIF. The system was built for a different scale. It was destined to fail here. So what do? Glenn asks. We fix it, I say. I can fix it. I need authorization to roll back the system to what we had. I need authorization to hire back the people we let go, or at least some of them. And I need Tom Belvedere to know that it was a mistake, and we're fixing it. Glenn looks at Brandon. Brandon? And this is the moment. This is when Brandon could step up, could acknowledge the problem, could work with me to solve it. But he doesn't. He starts talking about optimization challenges and implementation timelines and the need to let the system mature. All corporate speak for, I don't know how to fix this and I'm not going to admit it. I stand up. I'll fix it, I say to Glenn. Give me the authority and get out of my way. 2 weeks and we're back to where we were. 1 month and we're better. But you've got to trust me now. Glenn nods. He's scared, I can see it. The board is probably already asking questions. His job might depend on this. Do it, he says. I walk out of that office and I feel something lift. Not because I'm back in charge, I'm not. I'm still reporting to Brandon on paper, but because I'm useful again, because I have a problem to solve, and solving problems is what I do. Over the next 2 weeks, I work 18-hour days. I meet with Tom Belvedere directly. Glenn approves it, and I explain exactly what happened and exactly what we're doing to fix it. Tom's not happy, but he believes me. We've got history. He knows I don't bullshit him. I roll back the warehouse optimization system. Not completely. I keep some of the data structure because there's value there, but I rebuild the process the way it was. the way that works. I hire back 12 of the people we let go. Good people. Deb Carnes stops updating her resume. Within 2 weeks, order accuracy is back to normal. Within 3 weeks, shipping errors are down. By the end of June, Tom Belvedere tells Glenn that they're staying. The crisis is averted. But something fundamental has broken. Not in the operations, in the company's ability to function. Because Brandon Eckert is still in charge, still making decisions, still implementing transformation. And now he's angry and defensive because I just proved that his decisions were wrong. He starts shutting me out of meetings. He stops asking for my input. He brings in someone else, another consultant, this one even younger, even more theoretical, to help him think about what the next phase of optimization should be like. They spend July and August redesigning our client interface software. Software that was working fine. Software that our clients knew how to use. They redesign it to be more intuitive and more modern. By September, 3 more mid-sized clients file complaints about the new interface. One of them starts looking for alternative vendors. The software redesign costs about $80,000, and the outcome is worse. I'm watching this happen, and I'm not doing anything because I'm not in charge. I'm also not responsible. I gave my loyalty and my knowledge and my skill to Midwest Logistics for 28 years. I built something good, and that something good is being dismantled. I can't stop it. I don't have the authority. And after the Riverside wholesale situation and the Industrial Solutions Group near disaster, I've made peace with the fact that this company is going to fail unless they make a different choice. And they're not going to make a different choice. So I'm managing my exit. The consulting company has made an offer. It's a good one. $210,000 a year plus benefits plus a piece of the revenue from clients I bring in. The VP position at national retailers is still on the table too, but it's a bigger commitment. Relocation, more travel. It feels like a restart in a way the consulting role doesn't. I take the consulting job. I give notice in early September. My last day at Midwest Logistics Distribution is September 30th, 30 days after I saved the company from a major client defection. Glenn doesn't ask me to stay. Brandon doesn't ask me to stay. Nobody asks me to stay. There's a small goodbye thing in the break room, cake and coffee. People I've worked with for decades thank me and wish me well. Deb Carnes cries a little. A young guy named Marcus Jr., no relation but we have the same first name, tells me I changed his life by hiring him 8 years ago and teaching him how to do this work. I spend a few minutes talking with him about his future, and then I leave. I drive out of the parking lot and I don't look back. For about a month, everything's quiet. I'm settling into the consulting role. It's different work. I'm working with 3 companies simultaneously, helping them optimize their operations. It's interesting. It's not the same as running a division, but it's good work. Then, in the first week of November, Glenn calls. I almost don't answer, but I do. "Marcus, we've got a problem," he says, and his voice is about 3 notes higher than his normal speaking range. "We lost Industrial Solutions Group. They moved to accelerated distribution. Their contract ends with us at the end of the quarter, and they're not renewing. $15 million, about 20% of what's left after various other attritions over the past few months." "I'm sorry to hear that," I say, and I mean it. I'm sorry for the people who work there. I'm sorry for their families. "We need you back," Glenn says. "We need you to come back, even temporarily. We need your help too." "Glenn, I've got a new job. I've been there a month. I can't leave. Just for a few weeks, just to help us stabilize, help us figure out what to do, help Tom Belvedere understand." "Tom Belvedere knows exactly what happened," I say. "He watched Brandon destroy the relationship, and I watched from the sidelines. That's not a story he's going to forget." There's a long silence on the phone. "What if I got you a raise?" Glenn says. "What if we made it worth your while?" "Glenn, that's not what this is about." "I don't know what else to do," he says, and he sounds genuinely lost. "We're bleeding money. Brandon's implementing some new pricing strategy, and he's lost 2 more regional clients because we're pricing ourselves out of the market. The board is breathing down my neck. I need your help." I think about the past 9 months. I think about standing in a conference room and being told I'm being replaced by someone more competent. I think about the 28 years before that. I think about my family and my house and the retirement I've earned. "I can't help you, Glenn. I'm sorry." I hang up the phone. I feel bad about it for maybe 5 minutes, and then I don't. But Glenn keeps calling. Over the next month, he calls 5 more times. Each time his voice sounds a little more desperate. After the 4th call, he tells me that Brandon's been let go, that the board finally lost confidence and fired him, that they're looking for someone to come back and run things. You can have your job back, Glenn says. Senior Operations Director, full authority, full autonomy. We'll give you whatever you want. You don't have the political capital to protect me, I say. You made the choice to replace me 9 months ago. You can't unmake that choice. And that's the truth of it. If they bring me back now, everyone knows it's a desperation hire. Everyone knows that I'm damage control. Every decision I make will be looked at through the lens of, is this Marcus being territorial? Or is this Marcus protecting his turf? It would be a poisoned well. I've moved on. By December, the news starts to come out in industry circles. Midwest Logistics Distribution is in serious financial trouble. They're laying off more staff. They're talking to the board about restructuring. By January, they announced that the company is going to be sold. Not a real sale, an acquisition by a larger firm at a significant loss. The employees are being transferred or let go. The operations division is being consolidated with another company. The company that bought them saves about $40 million a year by eliminating redundancies. The shareholders take a loss but avoid a total collapse. The employees, the people I trained, the people I built the culture with, most of them end up scattered or jobless. I read about it in a trade journal. There's a small article about how operational challenges and leadership instability led to the decline. Nobody mentions Brandon Eckert by name. Nobody mentions that the decline was avoidable. The story just ends, like all these corporate stories end, with a price tag and a restructuring announcement. The consulting job turns out to be exactly what I need. The firm is good, the clients are challenging. I'm not running operations anymore, but I'm advising on operations, and the work is smart. Over the first 6 months, I bring in a contract that's worth $500,000. The firm notices. By 6 months in, I'm a partner track. My compensation gets restructured to include equity. The future is stable in a way that depends on my own performance, not on someone else's decisions. Karen asks me if I'm happy. That's not a question I'd asked myself in a long time, maybe since my 20s. But I think about it, and the answer is, yeah, I'm happy. I'm building something again. It's different. It's smaller in some ways, bigger in others. I have autonomy. I have respect. I don't have the weight of 90 people depending on me, but I have the satisfaction of solving real problems for real clients. We go on a trip in May, just me and Karen, 2 weeks. We go to the coast. We don't talk about the job much. We talk about our kids. We talk about getting older. We talk about the future in a way that feels open instead of certain. One evening, we're sitting on the beach. The sun's going down. And Karen says, "You're different." "Different how?" I ask. "Lighter. You were carrying something heavy all those years. You didn't know you were carrying it, but you were." I think about that. I think about the weight of responsibility, the weight of loyalty to a company that didn't ultimately value loyalty, the weight of knowing that if I didn't show up every day and solve problems and take care of people, things would break. That weight had become invisible. It had become just what life was, until suddenly it wasn't anymore. I think I was carrying other people's futures, I say, not my own. And now? Now I'm just carrying my own. That's the shift. That's what these 9 months taught me. Loyalty is wonderful. Commitment is important. But it cannot be one-directional. If you give everything to a company, and that company decides you're replaceable, you lose everything. You lose your identity. You lose your sense of value. You become a broken piece that gets replaced. What I learned, what I know now, is that the most valuable thing I have is my own capability. My ability to solve problems. My ability to build systems. My ability to lead. Those things are mine. They're not the company's. And if a company doesn't recognize their value, there will be another company that does. I think sometimes about the people I left behind. Deb Carnes ended up at Accelerated Distribution, the competitor company. I ran into her at an industry conference in June, and she told me they'd offered her a promotion and a significant raise. She's doing well. Another guy, Marcus Jr., is freelancing as an operations consultant now. He's building a practice. He told me I inspired him to take the leap. The company failed. That's not a secret. It's not something I take pride in, but it's also not my failure. I built it well. I maintained it well. I knew how to keep it healthy. The people who made the decision to replace me made that choice. And they learned that some things, some knowledge, some relationships, some institutional understanding, you can't replace with an MBA and a PowerPoint deck. But here's what I want to be clear about. I don't feel victorious. I feel sad about it. I put a lot into that company. I cared about those people. The facility is gone now. The brand is gone. The client relationships I spent decades building are scattered. That's a loss. It matters that it's a loss. What I don't carry anymore is responsibility for their loss. That's theirs to carry. These are the things 28 years taught me. Loyalty is important, but it cannot be blind. Institutions are fragile. They can crumble faster than seems possible. The things that matter most are the relationships you build, with clients, with colleagues, with suppliers. Those relationships are not the company's. They're yours. They're portable. They're real. I also learned that when your gut tells you something's wrong, it's usually right. When I sat in that conference room and saw Glenn unable to look me in the eye, I knew. I didn't have the information yet, but I knew. I started preparing immediately. I didn't panic. I didn't fight. I just prepared. And that preparation saved me. And maybe most importantly, I learned that you cannot make a company value you. You can work hard. You can be competent. You can be loyal. You can be the person who shows up and solves the problems. You can do all of that for 28 years. But if the leadership of that company decides that competence looks like something else, like an MBA or fresh ideas or optimization, or any of the 100 ways that companies convince themselves that experience is a liability instead of an asset, then you're done. It's not about you. It's about what that leadership wants to believe about itself. So you prepare. You build your network. You document your own knowledge. You stay open to opportunities. And you never make the mistake of thinking that your company is your identity. Because the moment you do, you're vulnerable to exactly what happened to me. I'm 53 now. I'm healthier than I've been in years. I'm working on things that interest me. I'm spending more time with my family. I'm building equity in a real firm with partners I respect. I don't know what the next 5 or 10 years look like. I used to think I did. I thought I'd be at Midwest Logistics until 65. That was the plan. That was the story. But plans change. Stories change. And sometimes the ending you didn't expect teaches you more than the ending you were counting on.